cross wedge that's got, it's nicely rounded and blended in so it doesn't put any marks into it. And on the edge of this stake here, this is where it fits just nicely in there and works in to start that shape, that sort of U shape, and that's the beginning of the actual roll of the socket. What we've got to go on to now, I don't actually need that now, is again with the lighter hammer, is we're going to actually start and draw these edges in to form a rolled socket. I'm tapping the edge that's furthest away from me towards me and the edge that's nearest to me away from me, like so, and that just starts to form the wrap round. At this stage it doesn't have to be anything too major, because what we've got to concentrate on now is these edges here. We've got to actually bring these edges in to start to close the socket in. If you do it too much here, what will happen is this will actually be too small. You won't actually get the correct size socket. Now what I've actually done here is I've actually used the heel of the hammer face in a way to working at that angle rather than that, so that it closes in around the socket, but it's drawing in those edges that we had. It's all starting to round it up nicely, but if anything, it's starting, you see this, the socket is starting to have a shape now of a taper. That is because you're working the hammer like that and it's starting to squeeze it all in the right direction. All we've got to do now is just keep it, heating it up and keep working it round now. Notice what I've done now is I've come to the rounded edge of the stake here, and now I'm using the hammer pointing away from me like so, so that it still keeps that taper in the socket, but what we're actually starting to do is we're starting to create that wasted shoulder part. It's still pretty rough at the moment. By a series of working that way and working on this edge with a hammer pointing that way, what we will create is we'll create a round wasted part here, a nice shoulder, and then a perfect taper socket that way. And as you can see, by alternating from that edge to that edge, what it's starting to do is it's starting to really tighten that up. The other thing that will start to work is the heat setting on this is what's called a black heat. A black heat is where in bright daylight like this it looks black, but if you put it somewhere dark it would still be glowing a red colour. At black heat, what happens is that you actually it planishes your hammer marks out, but it doesn't overstretch it. If you've got it at like a white heat, a really hot heat, as soon as you touch it, it's spreading all over the place. You can actually control the amount of spread, and you can actually start to introduce a nice finish, planished finish to the socket, and that's what you use when you're working at black heat. What I need to do now is I need to change the arrow stake to a different shape on, because I'm going to now form the taper a lot more evenly, and then we'll just carry on with the planishing to get the overall finish of the taper nice shape. putting it over this mandrel here and tapping it round, if you twist it and tap it away from you and twist it with the way that the wrap is going, it will actually tighten it up nicely. It's a way of actually, if it's too big, of reducing it. By putting it on this very rounded shape on the arrow stake here now, it's still quite hot, we're still at black heat. I can just take out all of those imperfections and hammer marks that we had before. Also, if you create like a bottleneck shape rather than a straight taper, it will start to bulge on the edges here. By laying that so that the socket is flat along here, you can actually roll it and tap simultaneously, and you'll take that bottle shape out. Now you can see that this is actually starting to tighten up really nicely. It may take a little longer to do, but you don't have to spend hours with a grinder to get it right if you do all the hammering stage now. The other thing is I'm aiming for an outside diameter of 1/2 inch. On my plate here, we have this hole here, and by placing that I can see that that at the moment is still quite big. It's not, that is a 1/2 inch hole. It won't fit in that. But if you actually look, this is, it's actually here is uneven. What I'll do is on the side of a grindstone, I'm going to take that off so that it's flush all around, and then we'll measure it again. So I'm now going to take this stake out and I'm going to put my grinder in here, and then we're going to go on to that stage. Now we're coming on to this bench grinder, and I'm actually going to grind the edge of this socket on the side of the wheel, which is something which is probably very similar to how medieval arrowsmiths would have worked with a hand cracked sandstone wheel. So I'm not cheating you, I'm doing something that could have quite easily been done, but it makes a much better overall job. So we'll start it up and put the goggles on. Right, that's now taking it so that it's nice and straight, square across the top. We've got, because of the action of the grinding, we've got a burr on the inside and we've got a burr on the outside. A little scraper like this on the inside will remove that burr, and just a quick brush. Quick brush with a file now gives us the true diameter of that socket. If we place it against the template, we can see that it's still a little bit too big. It's got to be taken in that a little bit more, but the overall wall thickness is quite even, and it's quite nicely formed. It's not too thin, it's not too thick. But say what we need to do is put the arrow stake back in again, warm it up, and take it that last little bit until it just fits inside that hole. If you're making batches of heads and you're wanting to make half a dozen or a dozen at a time, a simple plate like this with this hole in that for measuring your outside diameter and that for making the spoon blank is, very, very useful thing to do. So that's what we're going to move on to now. As you can see now, we've got a really nice round, even wall thickness. The taper's starting to look good. All the hammer marks are coming out. And that's it. That's just fitting in there. So that's now the right shape. So that's basically the socket done now. with all the arrowheads that I make, that is the exact process I go through to making the socket. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn this into what's the Type 10 that I showed you earlier. And the Type 10 head basically is what we do is we chop it off the bar, and then when we turn it around, hold it from the socket end in a special shape set of tongs, heat the front bit up, and then we're going to draw that out into a point. And then that's basically what that is. That is why this, for a beginner, is the easiest arrowhead to learn to make. But what I need to do first is I need to put a tool which is called a hardy, like so, in the vise, get it warm, and then I'll show you how this is used to actually cut the head off the bar.